Hello there, it's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking today. Now, the latest death toll is 9 children that have died because of STREP. Health experts are saying that lockdowns did indeed play a part in all of this. Goodness me. I can't help but ponder, have we basically sacrificed the health of our youngest children in order to save the elderly, the vulnerable in this country from COVID? Was that the right approach? And 15-minute cities, I like the idea of that, quite frankly. You've got everything you need on the doorstep, but how far do you go in your quest to enforce that? One council is basically saying you can have permits and you can have a certain amount of numbers of times that you can leave your own district. Sounds a bit weird to me. All in favour of saving the planet. Would you be up for it or not? And the royals, King Charles is going to meet the lady that says that she was a victim of racism. Is that the right approach, or is it the royals bowing to public pressure? And strikes. After years basically of having our Christmases restricted, finally we're allowed to come and do as we please, but those pesky strikers have other ideas. Is it right that basically across the Christmas period the strikes will be taking place? Do you support it or not? We'll have all that to come, but first let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Downing Street has declined to reveal if the Prime Minister is worried about patients dying due to NHS strikes. It's after 3 unions announced that thousands of ambulance workers and other NHS staff will walk out across England and Wales on the 21st and 28th of December. In a joint statement, GMB, Unison and Unite unions accused the government of ignoring pleas for a decent pay rise. However, Health Secretary Steve Barclay responded, saying unions' demands are not affordable. One Kassab is the national lead officer at Unite. He says patients' lives are already at risk.
Only 25% of shifts have the planned staff actually on that shift. There are 133,000 vacancies across the NHS in England alone. And what our members are telling us is that lives are being put at risk now and that people are dying now because of the state of the service.
A man has been arrested on suspicion of common assault during a walkabout by King Charles in Luton. Bedfordshire police say the suspect, aged in his 20s, was arrested in St George's Square after an egg was thrown in the direction of the monarch. King Charles was seen being guided away from the crowds by his security team following the incident. The King had been in Luton to meet community leaders and voluntary organisations. Baroness Monet is to take a leave of absence from the House of Lords following allegations that she benefited from a COVID PPE deal. It's alleged that Michelle Monet and her children received millions of pounds after she recommended a company to government ministers at the height of the pandemic. Baroness Monet has denied the allegations. The decision means she will no longer attend sittings of the House and won't be able to claim any allowance. Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner says the PM should remove the whip from the Baroness, but he's too weak.
She saw the writing on the wall and did what she feels she needs to, but it shows also that the Prime Minister is still not tackling the problems we face that was around this VIP illegal fast-track lane that he put in his procurement strategy on how they receive goods, and that's still a problem to this day that the Prime Minister is still not dealing with.
The Health Secretary has told the House of Commons we're seeing an earlier peak in Strep A cases than usual, but there is no new strain. At least 9 children have died from the bacterial infection in the UK since September. The latest is a 5-year-old from Belfast. The government says antibiotics could be given to children at schools affected by Strep A as a preventative measure. NHS GP Dr Veena Babu is urging parents to be on the lookout for symptoms.
If you're a parent with a young child, look up the symptoms, have a look at Google images of what the skin rashes look like, have the information at your fingertips. If you can't get hold of your GP, there's 111. Most practices have either e-consults, text messages, telephone calls. Worst case scenario when your child is unwell, of course, take them to A&E and the pediatric department will help. So I think as parents, you need to empower yourself with the information and act quickly.
7 more cases of diphtheria have been recorded among migrants in England, bringing the total for the year to 57. The UK Health Security Agency published the figures following reports of fresh cases at Manston Processing Centre in Kent. The cases, discovered between November 28th and December 4th, mark an increase from the previous week, where only 5 new cases were diagnosed. Last week, the Immigration Minister told MPs that asylum seekers with diphtheria symptoms would be put into isolation. England's rugby head coach, Eddie Jones, has been sacked after 7 years in the job. Under his leadership, the England team took 3 Six Nations titles and got to the final of the 2019 World Cup in Japan. However, this season has been England's worst performance since 2008. His former number 2, Leicester's director of rugby, Steve Borthwick, has been tipped to replace him. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is the People's Channel, GB News. Back now to Dewbs & Co.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. With me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Dominique Samuels, the writer and broadcaster, and the journalist and political commentator, Joe Phillips. Good evening, ladies. Ladies' night tonight, I like it. You know the drill, don't you, as well? It's not just about us here tonight, it's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? I want all of your thoughts. Just a reminder, I want to talk about STREP. I want to talk about postcode lockdowns, some people are calling them. 15-minute cities, great idea if you ask me, but getting a little bit weird when it comes to how you're going to enforce them. Should someone be able to tell you how often you can leave your own zone? God, that was a tough one for my accent. Anyway, no is the short answer to me. No, you shouldn't be able to do that. I want to talk about the Royals meeting with a lady that claimed racism. Is that the kind of the future now? Or is it kind of the Royals bowing to public pressure and striking over Christmas? Goodness me, haven't we had enough of our Christmas plans being interrupted? Last time by the government, this time by strikers. Are you still on the side of the strikers? Do you think it is all justified, actually? Because a lot of people struggling in this day and age. Give me all your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me as well at GBnews. Many of you pointing out, by the way, it's not just Oxford that are doing these kind of 15-minute cities. Someone else has been in touch with their city as well, is doing something similar as a trial. Is yours? Tell me. I want your thoughts on that. But first of all, I've got to say, one of the most important stories, certainly to me personally, as a mum to a young child, and I suspect if you have a young child yourself or a young grandchild, this will be high up on your agenda as well, of course, because 9 children are confirmed to have died from strep A in recent weeks. The latest one you've just been hearing in the news there, a 5-year-old who sadly passed away in Belfast. I mean, can you imagine what these parents must be going through? The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, believes the rise in infections is a consequence of COVID lockdowns. Let's have a listen.
We are seeing an earlier peak than usual in terms of cases, these cases, and we believe this is due to lower exposure during the pandemic, which has then meant to lower immunity. There is no new strain.
Interesting stuff. Dominique, your thoughts on some of this?
I think it's unforgivable and despicable that people were sold this lie about the effectiveness of lockdowns, and those that were opposed to this and warned that it would lead to excess deaths, it would lead to people being more susceptible to actually more serious illnesses. We were shut down as conspiracy theorists, as granny killers. But as we're seeing now, we've got children dying of strep A when we know that they wouldn't have been as susceptible to such illnesses if they were actually allowed to mix with other children. We've got the likes of Chris Whitty even admitting now that excess deaths are as a result of our COVID pandemic response, aka lockdowns, and that more people are going to be dying of cancer, for example. So I feel like people like me, not to score points, but we were sort of proven right in a way, and it's just sad that people have to die excessively for that point to be proven.
Yeah, and I've already had someone, I must say I've just lost your name because lots of emails fly in and it gets nudged around, but I've got someone that's just come in on my inbox saying, ugh, Michelle, are you talking about anti-lockdown stuff yet again? I've got to be honest, yeah, I am, quite frankly, because I think this is such an important topic because going forward, we're going to have other ailments, we're going to have other situations, and I think it's so crucial to have these kind of conversations because I don't think we should ever sleepwalk ever again into these whole blanket lockdowns with pretty much zero consideration for the consequences, unintended, of course. I don't think anyone would intend for this to happen, but the unintended consequences and the knock-on effects of these things. Where do you stand on it, Jo?
Well, I don't want to go round the houses again on lockdown or not, because I think, you know, with hindsight, we would perhaps all wish that things might have been different. And I think, you know, the COVID inquiry, when it publishes its full report, will show properly, one hopes, the true effects of it. And yes, it is inevitable that people were going to not be able to see doctors, not be able to get treatment during lockdown. I think just to put it into context, the thing that worries me most about this STREP A and these tragic deaths of these children, STREP A, as the health expert was saying earlier in the news bulletin, you know, it's not unusual, but it is quite unusual for it to become fatal. But what's really worrying is that there is a shortage of penicillin. And there is an idea that's been put around today by health ministers that perhaps there would be a sort of a blanket antibiotic treatment of whole year groups in schools. Well, we're coming up to the end of the school term for the Christmas holidays, so whether or not that happens remains to be seen. But if you've got a shortage of penicillin and you're then using amoxicillin, and I'm sure there'll be somebody out there who's a medical expert who will correct me if I'm wrong on this, that is also used to treat things like bronchial pneumonia. What is worrying is that if we know we have a problem, and, you know, not again to go back through lockdown, but where is the planning for events like this, where you need supplies of medicine and you need to react quickly? And the other problem, of course, is, you know, can people, and, you know, my children are grown up now, but as any parent with young kids, you worry about the slightest thing, whether it's going to turn into something deadly. You know, do you go straight to hospital? Do you call the doctor? Do you go back home?
Well, everything's backlogged, though, and so you can't. But you can't talk about this issue without talking about the issue of lockdown. It didn't take hindsight for many people, including medical professionals, to say that this actually wasn't the right approach.
No, I know.
Now, as you've said, we've got a shortage of penicillin. Yes. If people want to take the kids to go see a GP, they're going to struggle unless they decide to go private. So I actually think we do have to talk about it. It's not rehashing it, but it's making sure that those that push such a dangerous and harmful policy are held accountable, and we must make sure it doesn't happen again, because it didn't take a genius to work out what the collateral damage would be. You don't have to be an expert, you just have to be someone with common sense.
What also you don't have to be a genius to be is to work out that all local authorities and government, including all the emergency services, regularly have crisis management planning training. And all that was talked about, you know, whether it was a terror attack, nobody saw COVID coming until it was sort of there in China and then coming over across to Europe.
Well,
but nobody has ever bothered. Successive governments have not implemented the recommendations that have come out of those exercises. We've heard Kate Bingham, head of the Vaccine Task Force, last week, giving evidence in Parliament, saying, why are they now dismantling the one thing that we did get right, which was to get the vaccines and get them out quickly, whether or not you agree with the vaccines, but we did it quickly. And we managed to get something that was working a lot better than other countries in the world. And I just think, you know, we've got a government that's selling stuff off. They've sold off that Oxford Centre. They've sold it to the Americans. They're dismantling it. They're talking about dismantling the COVID fraud task force. We've got a shortage of penicillin. We knew that we were going to have shortages of drugs. Nothing has been done to try and prevent those problems.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
If we agree, that's awful. We've got to go home now.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, we haven't go to the pub. See you later. I wouldn't object to that. But no, it is. It's worrying because as a mom, you know,
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, you've
It's
got
awful.
to trust your mother's instincts. You've got to trust your mother's instinct. And it used to be the case that if your kid was ill, you could pick up the phone. You know, let's hope we never need to, but you could pick up the phone. You could get an ambulance. And you could get your child to hospital and hopefully treated. But even that now, you cannot take that for granted. That service is going to be available to you.
You know, one of the children who I believe, still in intensive care, was taken to hospital, was admitted to hospital, but having been sent home from hospital with steroids.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's no guarantee. I know, you know, when you're a parent, there is nothing that churns you up more than thinking, is this sniffle going to turn into something else? Is this rash meningitis? Is this going to, you know, it's awful.
Do you know what I don't understand about this whole kind of ambulance backlog and the bed space? Like, I'm sure someone somewhere will tell me why this is not happening, but to me, the most common sense approach here, a lot of people, ambulances are turning up, they can't offload their patients because there's no bed space. One of the reasons there's no bed space is because there's an awful lot of, it sounds a crass term, but I'll use it anyway, bed blockers. So people that are medically well enough to be discharged, but they're not able to be discharged. So then I can't help but think, why haven't we got a situation now where we've effectively replicated the so-called Nightingale hospitals? You build these Nightingale hospitals, you don't need intensely medical staff because a lot of these people are not medically desperately unwell.
You need something like the old-fashioned cottage hospitals where people who are not, you know, maybe need a little bit of help, perhaps of their personal care, perhaps they're a bit unsteady on their feet or they've got limbs in plaster or whatever. You need that halfway house place. But you need the staff, Michelle, and we haven't got the staff.
Yeah. Yes, but you can recruit. This is what I'm not getting my head around.
You can't recruit.
If somebody's not medically unwell, i.e. you don't need to be in hospital, so I'm not talking about sick people, I'm talking about the people that don't need to be in hospital, but they cannot be discharged because the services are not available to them. If those people can be relocated into, say, let's call it the Nightingale Hospital, they're not desperately unwell. So the staff that you need, they're not, you know, intensely medical qualified.
But there's a shortage of people working in care homes and you know, the care that goes out.
There's also an awful lot of unemployed people. So what are they doing? Why don't they start having to...
Well, we did sack thousands for not taking the vaccine.
This is very true. I think they should be reinstated.
But you've also got, you know, people who are their carers going into people's homes. They're on minimum wage very often. In many, many cases, they're having to drive from place to place to place. They've got very short time to see people. They might be the only person that elderly or vulnerable person sees throughout a day. They're having to do that. They're getting paid 25 pence a mile to drive their own car.
I know.
I mean, would you do that? No, you go and work in Tesco's or Sainsbury's.
Why do we?
So why do we treat the people that we need so much so badly? And then why are we surprised when people like firefighters and nurses and rail staff go on strike?
You make a very good point, Joe Phillips, and I'll be coming to the strikes, by the way. At the end of the programme, I want your thoughts on some of these strikes. Your Christmas is potentially going to be impacted now. If you're someone that wants to travel to see your loved ones, you might struggle if the strikes go ahead as planned. Are you OK with that? Are you on the side of the strikers for the reasons we've just been discussing? Tell me your thoughts. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'll have some of your feedback on that first topic. And also, over in Oxford, they've got this 15-minute city concept now. Fine, not a problem, sounds good, have everything you need on the doorstep. But what lengths should they go to restrict you from leaving said 15-minute city? Tell me your thoughts, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes. Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock this evening alongside me, Dominique Samuels, the writer and the broadcaster, and political commentator, Joe Phillips. Welcome back, everybody. Lots of you are in contact about that first topic. Richie says, yes, Michelle, lockdowns are responsible for STREP. The lockdowns has weakened people's immunity. They should never have happened. He says, I am one of the vulnerable that the lockdown was meant to save. I'm 69 years old now. Oh, this is a bit... you say you would rather have died rather than us have a lockdown because you feel you would have preferred to save the young children. You say you've had their life, your life, and the children's are just beginning. Goodness me. Delia has just written in saying, Michelle, my beautiful 35-year-old granddaughter died of strep yesterday, leaving 3 children aged 2, 4 and 6. We are devastated as a family. She says, please, can you make it known to people that adults as well as children can contract this? Goodness me, I'm sorry to hear that. And I have to say, that hadn't even entered my thoughts about adults. So, of course, thoughts with anyone that is affected by this. Right, let's move on to Oxford. Do you live there? Have you been there? I have. It's a beautiful place. About to get less beautiful, perhaps, if you live there, because they've approved a trial scheme now, basically, to divide the city up into 6, what they call 15-minute neighbourhoods. I have to say, I like the concept of a 15-minute neighbourhood because basically what it means is anything that you need will be accessible 15 minutes away. Brilliant if you can get into it anyway. But yeah, great concept. But how do you kind of control this, police this? Should you even be attempting to police it and control it? When you start talking like that, you cross the line for me, I've got to say. Anyway, these zones, if you want to cross zones, you're going to be restricted to 100 trips per year. Your car is going to be have its, the registration number paid attention to, monitored by cameras, and you'll be fined if indeed you do breach that 100 trips per year. Bit weird to me. I wouldn't be happy with that. But Joe Phillips,
it's got a bit of a whiff of Big Brother about it.
A bit,
it?
Just a bit.
I mean, this seems to 15-minute cities have been talked about for a long time, and they are a brilliant idea. As you say, if you can, in fact, make them work. And they're very popular in continental Europe, where they have a much better approach to traffic generally. They're trying to do the same thing in Canterbury, near where I live. And it's, frankly, not as extreme as this plan in Oxford, but it's quite ridiculous because to get from one side of the city to another, to school, let's say, or to a railway station, you're going to go through 3 zones. The thing about Oxford is that I saw something about they want to have some sort of electronic gates.
I think,
checkpoint.
Well, I've got to say, in fairness, I was looking at one of the councillors involved in this, and she was actually saying on places like Twitter that has all been misrepresented and that these electric gates are not for cars. It's more about buses and things like that. So, that's, to be fair to them, that's what she was saying. Dominique, where are you on it?
I just think these sorts of control tactics are dressed up in the name of environmentalism, but I think it's authoritarianism, if I'm being honest. It's about controlling people. It's about tracking people. We know that people's number plates are going to be tracked to make sure that they're taking these specific number of trips a year. And unless people actually start saying, no, hang on a minute, I don't want to be in a form of climate lockdown to save the planet, then these things are going to continue to happen. The travel chief of Oxford Council said it's going to happen whether people like it or not. That, to me, doesn't sound very democratic at all.
Yeah, because the point you're making there, they had a vote on this, I think it was on the 29th of November, and then in an interview before that, the person you're referring to did say something along the lines of, this is going to happen, which is not, as you say, very democratic.
And this is, can I just one last point? And this isn't just, one thing about the quote-unquote 15-minute city. People are referring to it as a climate lockdown. I think that's what it is. But there are people that are far more extreme. There's one company called Arup, and it's been praised on the World Economic Forum's website. They've suggested things like this, but they've even suggested things like people only being allowed to purchase a limited amount of clothes per year. All of this is wrapped up in this idea that we need to save the planet. You'd be stupid if you think that billionaires and the super rich suddenly care about the planet. What they really want is control, and they want to line their own pockets. And we are going to suffer as a result.
Well, I won't be suffering as a result because I wouldn't actually let someone dictate to me how many clothes I can and can't buy and where I can and can't go. And I find this quite interesting that I almost feel like we've sleptwalked inch by inch by inch by inch. Things that we would ordinarily, Joe, have been outraged about, like rejected straight up. We've almost become kind of, I don't know how to, I use the frog in the water analogy when you're boiling it up. And obviously don't realise it's dying. And I just think, how has it got to the point where somebody, a councillor or whoever, can say to you, if you want to leave your zone, you've got to apply for a permit?
I mean, it's horrible. And I think the point that Dominique just made about how companies are trying to monetise this in the name of greenwashing or whatever it is. You know, yes, of course, lots of people buy too much stuff, but the way to stop that is through education and say, actually, you know, it would be much better to use second-hand or recycle or make sure that your clothes that you don't want go to charity shops or get repurposed. There are other ways around it. The same with this. Of course, we need to make our cities much less polluted and much more car-free. I mean, we've been talking about children's health and, you know, we know, very sadly, from the inquest in the little girl who lived in London that, you know, the traffic pollution on the road where she lived was directly responsible for her death. But, you know, there are ways of doing it. You actually say, all right, well, we're going to ban cars completely, but all public transport within the city centre.
You can't say you're going to ban cars.
Can't ban cars.
Well, but that is no more extreme. You can say we're going to ban residents having cars.
Oh,
what?
see, this is
They
the
can't.
thing. This is the thing. And this is why I think people that subscribe to the sort of Labour green agenda genuinely are kind of dangerous, if I'm being honest, because you sort of project your idea of what's moral and what's right onto other people and use it as an excuse to take away their rights. Throughout history, that's never ended well. It's ended with authoritarian regimes where millions of people have died. If I want to use a car, I think I should be able to use a car. And I understand, you know, this is the thing. Genuine issues get wrapped up and, like, sort of manipulated, and then they are used to justify extreme measures. I agree that pollution isn't the best thing and we should be making efforts to reduce it, but I do not agree with assigning people to zones, controlling where they can shop, controlling where their kids go to school and banning them from using cars.
There are other ways to think about it. I mean, this, I think, is too authoritarian.
But then you said you could ban cars.
Well, I'm just saying, look at other things. There are city centres. I mean, I've just come back from Florence a little while ago. There are no private cars in the city. And, you know, the roads are an absolute delight to walk down. Delivery vehicles get in and out. People can drive, you know, during certain periods of the day, but during the daytime, it's, you know, it's pedestrianised.
I don't mind these pedestrianised zones. I actually think they're quite nice. But
they are nice.
As for someone telling me, no, you can't have a car, I would literally tell them, on your bike. I think that's one of the problems in society. There's the people that are so-called in charge, you're overstepping your mark a little bit, quite frankly.
But then you get the people who park on pavements and you say, excuse me,
well, did you see what happened? Well, did you see what happened to some of those guys? Was it? I want to say it's in Manchester. I don't condone this, by the way,
but I can understand.
Yes.
Fury.
Pavement parkers, if you don't know what we're talking about, a load of people went along to said cars, smashed their windows and spray painted "move" on their bonnets. Don't condone that, of course, but it did make
I've
me
got
chuckle.
a fantastic trick for people.
Well, tell me your trick in the break. Tell me your trick in the break. I've got to go. I've been told off
I want to
about 4
share
times.
this with everybody.
All right. Listen, you definitely can't go away now. I'm going to come back in 2 minutes. But for nothing else, Jo has got a trick that she wants to unveil and share with the nation. Also, alongside Jo's trick, I want to talk about the royal family. Should the King Charles be meeting the lady that claims racism or not? Are they just bowing to public pressure? And also the strikes. Where do you stand on them over the Christmas period? See you in a couple of minutes. Hello there. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, until 7 o'clock. I do chuckle sometimes at some of your emails, I have to say, but some of them I can't read out because it's only tea time. Anyway, I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside with Dominique Samuels, the writer and the broadcaster, and the political commentator Joe Phillips, who, before the break, was just talking about, these 15-minute cities, climate lockdowns, all the rest of it, whatever you want to call it. Jo said she's got a trick that she wants to share with the nation. Go on, Jo.
This is about people who... We were talking about pavement parkers.
Oh, yeah,
right?
pavement parkers.
So where I live, outside my house, all along the road, there are signs.
It's got to be a short trick, by the way.
OK.
Yeah.
No parking, no parking, no parking.
Yeah.
Every now and again, you get somebody, they stop there for 5 minutes. It's OK, it's fine. Sometimes you find people parked there all day long. So I have discovered that the best thing to do is, in your very best handwriting, write on a large piece of paper, there are some very good opticians locally, as you clearly can't read, and then stick it on the windscreen.
That'll tell them.
With marmalade.
Stick it in that criminal damage or something like that.
Don't do any damage, but enough make them cross.
Well, there you go. That is a trick. They do deal with it a little bit harsher, as we've just been saying. I think it was in Manchester. But Jo, she doesn't mess around. She gets a large piece of paper, writes on it, and you can't see, basically, and sticks it with marmalade.
Oh,
I can't remember the last time I've had marmalade.
Well, anything will do. I mean, you can use golden syrup, you can use chutney. Chutney's a bit chunky.
You can see who's middle class on this panel, can't you? Darling, you can use chutney if you've got some available. Oh, yeah, I'll just go into my pantry and I'll take my chutney and I'll smear it all over that windscreen, so I will. That'll tell the pavement parkers. Right, that was a good trick. Thanks for sharing. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? King Charles and Queen Camilla have invited the charity worker to go meet them at Buckingham Palace. This is, of course, all about that, the whole racism row where she was asked where she was from and all the rest of it. Anyway, Dominique Samuels, is this what King Charles should be doing with his time, or is this kind of the royals bowing down to pressure?
It is. I feel like the royal family is just really desperate to go woke, and I think that's why they've ultimately bowed down to the mainstream media pressure so quickly by having Lady Hussey resign, the lady who was accused of being racist to Ngozi Fulani, the charity worker who was attending an event, without so much of an investigation, by the way. This sort of thing is sinister, it's concerning, and what's sort of ironic is that the royal family under Charles seems so desperate to sort of pander to these left-wing woke groups that would be very happy to see the royal family not exist. Those that are ardent supporters of the royal family, the ones that I've spoken to anyway, feel really uncomfortable with the way Lady Hussey has been treated. I personally don't think that she's this bigoted racist that she's been painted out to be, and I don't think that she should have been tossed to the wolves like that. At least have an investigation, but she was just bye-bye, and now he's having talks with the woman who caused the whole issue and basically had the media set upon this old woman. I think it's bizarre and cruel, actually.
Do you think it's bizarre and cruel? Do you agree?
No. I think they were damned if they did and damned if they didn't. I mean, the whole thing, unfortunately, is overshadowed. I mean, talk about woke with Harry and Meghan and this ridiculous Netflix series. Yawn, yawn.
But are you going to watch it, though?
I am, probably.
No. I mean, I'm so bored with this self-indulgent, narcissistic, me, poor me, poor me, poor me. And I think it's deeply insulting, not just to his father, his brother, his sister-in-law, his late grandmother. It's also insulting to quite a lot of people in this country. I was working in Lambeth when they were engaged, and they came down to Brixton, and the crowds were out at 7 o'clock in the morning queuing to see Meghan, and the welcome that she got could not have been warmer and kinder and full of love. And I just think that the way they've behaved and the way they run this double life of hypocrisy on their climate change, but we're taking private jets. We live in this great big mansion, but we're going to do this, that and the other for charity. All of this guff about empowering women. She could have had a role doing some really good stuff. And the idea that she didn't know what she was marrying into is as bonkers as letting this mug read the news.
Do you think they should keep their titles?
No, I don't think they should keep their titles, but I wrote a column for The Express, it's in the paper today, and I was saying, similar to you, that I think they're actually hypocrites because they claim to be about truth, about love, about inclusivity. You know, Harry and Meghan aren't bothered about all the royal pomp and ceremony, but the reality is that they need the titles in order to remain interesting to the likes of Spotify and Netflix, and in order for them to survive additionally, they need the division, they need the anger. You can see that with the sort of race-inspired, angry, screeching debates that are constantly taking place at home where these two are concerned. They are walking contradictions, and I think that the royal family do sort of need to grow a backbone in this sense, because unless they actually start saying something back, they're going to keep tearing chunks and they're going to continue and continue. I don't think Harry and Meghan are finished with the royal family in any sense of the word.
See, isn't that the point, though, Dominic, with the way that they dealt with Lady Susan Hussey, in a way, is because if they said, we'll have an investigation, there would have been people saying, oh, the royal family's racist, and you're going to get Netflix with Meghan and Harry claiming that, apparently. So they had to do something and condemn it.
So do you think she was a scapegoat, then?
Yeah, she definitely was.
I don't... I mean, I wasn't there, you weren't there, you weren't there. All I know is what I have heard from people who were there, including Ngozi Fulani as well, and the people that were there.
Very odd, though, that you can transcribe word for word a conversation.
But even in the conversation that she posted, the transcript, it sounded like when Lady Hussey was asking the questions, it sounded like Ngozi was literally on the defence from the get-go. I've been in situations, I've seen it, where someone asks you where you're from, and a lot of ethnic minorities instinctively feel as though they're under attack. So they feel the need to sort of be on the offence. And I think from what she said, I think Lady Hussey probably sensed it and was probably messing with her a bit. That's sort of the impression I got.
And the trouble is, unless you can hear it and unless you were there, you don't know whether it was said.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure why we keep blasting that thing out there. Sorry.
Good humour or whatever. But Lady Susan Hussey is not your average 83-year-old. She has been around the royal family for many, many decades. She knows how to behave, and she, you know, if you thought somebody was uncomfortable with the way you were talking to them, even if you didn't mean any offence, you should have had enough grace and manners to row back.
Have we even heard from Lady Hussey, by the way?
No, but I should imagine she's got a bit more dignity and she's going to keep her mouth shut.
Yeah, but you see, I find that a real shame because people kind of come out and make these allegations, the world turns against them, and then they don't really get the opportunity to be able to put their side of the story. So it's like this whole Harry and Meghan thing. I mean, if you guys hate the royal family so much, why don't you voluntarily give up your own titles?
And just stop talking.
Voluntarily go get on with your life and move on. And then the travesty of it is, people are, these, say, Harry and Meghan, they're saying their thing, saying their thing. And then the royal family, because they're dignified and the position that they hold, they don't respond.
I know. So that's what I mean. So they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. And, you know, what was the Queen's maxim? Never complain, never explain. I just think, you know...
Do you think Charles will do an interview, though, off the back of this Netflix thing?
No, I shouldn't think so.
Really?
Well, maybe... I would imagine he'll refer to it in his Christmas message.
Do you?
Yes.
But then what did he say in his last message when he was saying he loves his sons and he wishes them all? I mean,
Yeah, he did talk about it, and I think he said something about families and something. But I'm sure when he does his first King's Christmas message, he will refer to families. The trouble is, you know, we've all got problems. Every family's got problems and schisms and things. But this is so public, and as Dominique says, they're making so much money out of it. That's what's so distasteful. And why don't, you know, and they're only valuable because they're not any longer royal. Exactly. And I think, I mean, I'm sure that we would have a completely different conversation if we were sitting in America. You know,
their fans are insane.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Americans do think, you know, we're an appalling country and we're completely racist and we...
That's the thing, that's what they've actually helped cultivate, and they know they've helped cultivate that because it fuels their desire for revenge. And, you know, if you are truly about, you know, the charity work, the goodness, the truth, the peace, then your actions should inspire a certain kind of response, but they inspire the opposite.
You know, what do they want apart from money?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I hate my family so much that I'm going to make a fortune talking about them. I mean, it's all very odd to me. If you don't like your family, disown yourself, change your name, get rid of your titles, crack on with your life. You know, you can always get a job. You don't have to. Yeah, there you go. You can make chutney and smear it on the windscreens of the pavement parkers near you. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I want to talk to you about strikes. Now, of course, it's rumoured that our Christmas could be disrupted because of strikes. You know, I've got to say, we've had Christmas disrupted a couple of times now, haven't we? Surely it's time to move on from all of that, isn't it? Or do you back the strikers? Do you side with them and think that what they're doing is absolutely justified? Tell me your thoughts and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wouldn't Tonight, are rail unions heartless for trying to destroy our first Christmas of freedom after the pandemic? Plus, Dan will meet the man on a mission to overhaul our broken immigration system, Nick Timothy. There's opinion galore from Kelvin McKenzie and Reform UK's Richard Tice, and top columnist Sarah Vine battles ex-royal butler Paul Burrell over Harry and Meghan misinformation. That's Dan Wouldn't Tonight, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Lots of you writing in about that royal story there. Amy says that Prince William should do a response interview, charge a couple of £1 million for it and donate funds to charity. But really, is that what you want to see? I don't want to see that. I think actually the thought of two brothers, two siblings anyway, I think fighting and arguing and being separated, that makes me incredibly sad actually. And I think that sometimes, I can't remember who said it, but when they go low, you go high. All I have to say, I'm not sure I could bite my tongue so much, and people were saying that much stuff about me.
But
Celia,
dignity has got to be better.
Hey, I tell you what, dignity is a rare thing, and it seems to be getting even rarer in today's societies. Celia says, Michelle, all the media should ignore them, and then maybe then they would stop. I can't see that happening, though, do you? Can you see the media ignoring them? Although, by the way, if you see the Netflix trailer, half the media shots that they put in there, it's not even the media focusing on them. Did you see that? It's all a bit weird, if you ask me. Alan says, Michelle, have you or any of your guests read 1984 by George Orwell? It's all coming true. Is it coming true?
Yeah.
Alan reckons it is.
Well, 1984, yes, some of it is. You know, Brave New World, all of those things, they were very prescient.
Brave new world, stupid new world. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Dominique Samuel, the writer and broadcaster, is alongside me, and the political commentator, Joe Phillips. In case you've just tuned in, you're wondering who you can hear, that's who it is. Right, let's talk ambulance strikes, shall we? Well, strikes generally, because we've touched on this, haven't we? There's lots of strikes, pretty much everyone's striking these days anyway. It's all started to be a lot more coordinated, but now that we're hearing RMT Union will walk out potentially at 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve until the 27th of December, disrupting the travel plans of many over Christmas. Joe Phillips, I've got strong opinions on this, but I know you have. Go on.
Well, they're not going to be disrupting that many travel plans because the trains have always stopped about 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve. There are never any trains running on Christmas Day and very, very few on Boxing Day. What might be disrupted is the engineering work that takes place over the Christmas period. I mean, if we look at the people who are going on strike, people who work on the railways, postmen and women, nurses, ambulance workers, bus drivers and bus staff, highway workers, teachers and baggage handlers. Most of these people are the people that some people were out clapping for during COVID. They're the people who kept going. And most of them have been offered an absolutely appalling pay deal. They've been working for less money. They've seen their real wages, real pay, decrease since 2014. The government are trying to pitch this as something into the 1970s because they know that their core audience of the Conservative Party love to go back to the 1970s and the lazy reporting about union barons and holding the country to ransom.
So what do you think they should give them then, Joe?
I think they should sit down and talk to them.
But they've done that.
And they've offered them 8% over 2 years. So that's 4%. That isn't even half the rate of inflation.
But what do you think they should give them? That's my question.
I think they should talk to them about looking at an inflation-linked pay offer with no redundant or no forced redundancies.
So 10+%.
If necessary.
And no forced redundancies. So you think it's fair for an organisation to not be able to evolve with the times if they need to?
No, I'm not saying that at all. But if you look at the profits that the private... there have been deals done, Michelle. There have been deals done separately. The government is putting the blame on the unions because they're not willing. I mean, up until now, this is the first time that anybody's actually sat down and talked to the RMT. Mm-hmm. This is the first time in 106 years of its history that the Royal College of Nursing has voted to go on strike. Paramedics and ambulance workers... my son's a paramedic. These people do not take this action lightly. So when you say, or other people say, this is about disrupting Christmas, these people have kept going for years and years and years. And part of the problem is that the organisations that they work for, particularly the National Health, are broken. And they're striking not just about pay, it's about working conditions.
Well, fair play to you, actually, because every time I ask someone, what do you think they should get, they don't seem to be able to give me an answer. So you're saying inflationary pay rise. So you think that every public sector worker, pretty much, and I know this is private sector as well, but the public worker, you think that we can afford 10% plus pay rises for every single public sector?
These are private companies. The Royal Mail...
I know, but you mentioned your son, the paramedic. So I'm saying let's park private companies because they can do what they want. I'm asking public sector, 10% plus. Do you think as a country we can afford that?
Let's have a think about how much money we spent on track and trace. £39 billion.
Yeah, appalling.
Not a penny of it has come back. How many billions were spent and given to cronies and mates on the VIP fast track for dodgy PPE and other deals that have not been clawed back? We found the money for that when we needed it. We need to pay these people
we found
for
the money
what
for a lot of
done.
things when we need it. Dominique, go.
To be honest, I kind of dislike talking about strikes because...
Why?
The whole thing sort of makes me suspicious because I feel as though strikes have been sort of conveniently placed as this really polarising debate where, you know, the left and the right attack each other. You know, your shirkers that want to bring down the government versus, you know, your cruel people that don't believe in one's right to strike. Where I do think there's a middle ground in all of this, and I think that is where I stand, that I acknowledge that some of the pay rises that are being asked for example, I think nurses were asking for 15%.
And then some.
I don't think that is necessarily reasonable, taking into consideration the economic outlook. But at the same time, I do think that our public services and the people that work for things like Royal Mail, I don't think they have actually been treated very well. And it's just a fact that their pay hasn't risen enough in recent years, which is why at a time of really high inflation, they're saying, well, actually enough is enough now.
They can't
because they can't continue.
And the idea that strikers are inconveniencing ordinary people, they are ordinary people.
But the coordinated nature of a lot of this, unions talking to each other, coordinating a lot of these strikes to bring maximum pain to people that are not involved, not caught up. So you're
it's not the only way they can actually be heard, though.
Nobody wants to go on strike, Michelle. Nobody wants to go on strike. They lose money for a start. They have to go through all sorts of hoops. In fact, when on my way here through Westminster, there was a rally of the Fire Brigades Union. And the speaker, I don't know who he was because I wasn't there for the whole thing, but talking about the hoops that they have to go through in order to get a ballot that meets the thing. You know, they're not allowed to vote for a ballot electronically, even though that's how we've ended up with a Prime Minister that we didn't vote for, electronic voting.
Well, something tells me this whole strike conversation will rumble on and on and on because sadly, because let's face it, whatever side of the argument you're on, no one can deny that actually this is a very sad situation, that all of this is coming to this and that the country is in the state that it's in because ultimately everyone just wants to go to work and earn a living and to be able to provide for their own family, don't they? So I suspect this is not the last time we'll be talking about it, but it is the last time for tonight because look at the time. Joe, Dominique, thank you very much for your company. Thank you to you at home. Laurence Fox is up next in place of Nigel. Good evening. Laurence, what have you got for us?
Evening, Dewbs. I do indeed have strikes for you. I actually went to the Fire Brigade protest today and bumped into a couple of firemen who saved my life. So we're going to be talking strikes, and then to a Hollywood Oscar-nominated actor.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Northerly winds are now arriving, bringing colder weather, but also, actually, over the next few days, plenty of crisp winter sunshine, frosty nights, some ice patches, and in a few spots, some snow. Mostly at the moment, that snow is going to be across northern Scotland. That's where the strongest of the winds are, and that's where the coldest of the air is. So heading into the evening, some clear spells developing across western parts of the UK as well as the south. A lot of cloud floating about, but we do get the clear spells. Temperatures will fall widely at a touch of frost and temperatures a few degrees below freezing, and it's going to be feeling cold everywhere as we begin Wednesday. But it's across northern Scotland where we're going to see the greatest risk of snow, some disruption due to that snow through Wednesday, with it building up at lower levels, 2 to 5 centimetres, 5 to 10 centimetres, if not more, over the hills. There'll also be some showers running down the east coast of England and affecting Northern Ireland. These are mostly rain with some hill snow mixed in. Elsewhere across the UK, maybe chilly, but it's bright blue skies, crisp winter sunshine and temperatures at around 5 or 6 in the south, 3 or 4 further north. Although over higher parts of Scotland with that snow setting in, it's going to be very cold. And through Thursday, early hours, temperatures in some spots dipping into the minus double digits. But a widespread frost, nevertheless, across the UK, around some western coast where we keep showers going, as well as the east coast, some icy patches to start off Thursday. And in sheltered spots, temperatures getting down to minus 6, minus 7 Celsius, if not lower. Then as we begin Thursday, there are some areas of rain, sleet and snow around. One pushing into parts of North Wales, into northern England and the North Midlands, could bring some settling snow for a time. And the snow showers continue for the north of Scotland as well. In between, plenty of sunshine, but staying cold into the weekend.
Good evening. Tonight on Farage with me, Laurence Fox, I'm in a bit of a conundrum. Usually I have a pretty solid view on fairly much everything, but tonight I am going to need your help to decide whether I sympathise with those striking or whether I don't. We'll discuss it with a Tory voice, a Labour voice and a striking voice. I was also out and about today talking to firefighters who looked set to strike, and seeing as none of the unions will come on and talk to me, I went to them. I was lucky enough to meet two former firefighters, no, current firefighters, who saved mine and my family's life back in the day as well. Also, tonight I will speak to the world-famous Hollywood actor and legend, Tom Conti. You know, the Dewbs, Shirley Valentine, Reuben, and even Friends. All that coming up after the news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Laurence. Here's the latest from the GB News.